Welcome, everyone, to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. To my right here is Shadow the Night Owl, my right-hand man, the spirit animal of the channel. Welcome to everyone that's here. Earlier tonight, we had the members-only live stream. Welcome back to everyone who was in that as well. We had a grand old time as usual. So I see Linda, Bethany, Rooster, Giannine, Ruth Ann. Who else do I see in here? Danielle will probably be here shortly as well. D. Also, I don't know if you all noticed, but we had a new kind of thumbnail today. Experimenting with changes. Turn and face the strange. Changes. Right, Teresa? So we'll see. I'll see if that thumbnail makes any difference for people, as opposed to my basic ones. Now, basic ones are my MO, though. So people know, oh, that's a basic thumbnail. That's probably Jared. But we'll see. We'll see. These are a little more fancy ones out there. So today, though, we got an Ashleigh Banfield video to go over and a Matt Johnson video to go over. More about Brian Hooker's lies that have been exposed. Ashleigh Banfield, she does not like herself some Brian Hooker, that's for sure. She drops some F-bombs in there, too. Hello there, Sandy. Welcome. And as everyone floats on in here or strolls on in through the gate, make sure you like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Throw Shadow here a like vest the same way Brian Hooker should have to Lynette Hooker, but did not. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Tell a friend or five about the flock of black sheep here. Say hello to the flock of black sheep. Hello there, Karen. We have a great Black Sheep Nation here. And as always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting memberships. Great ways to support the channel. They help me pay for Shadow's soy-free hoodie snacks. And when you're a member, you get access to the members-only live streams. We do those once a week. So we just had that earlier tonight. A grand old time per usual. And I usually go live, 10 to 10:30 p.m. Eastern, usually. But tonight's later. Usually it's later when I do the members only before. But we talk about true crime, current events, and psychology. And we have some chuckles in here. I call this place also the Chuckle Hut sometimes for a reason. Mavs and Hubby, what's shaking over there? And I always love to see all the flock of black sheep supporting one another and getting along. It's always a great sight to see. But let's jump into this Ashleigh Banfield video here. Ashleigh, not in her casual gear today. Shadow noticed that right away.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashleigh Banfield and this is Drop Dead Serious. And I know I'm wearing a dress and it's not usual. I'm kind of hoodie and plaid, but it's getting to be summer. And so summer dress. I have a lot to tell you about things that Brian Hooker has said that we are digging up from his past because suddenly they don't match all the stuff that we've discovered in the last 5.5 weeks about his story. What happened to Lynette Hooker? What happened to your wife, Brian Hooker? Because she didn't bounce off the back of your dinghy and then suddenly get lost in the giant seas and the current and the waves and the tide. All that stuff didn't happen. Okay, none of it works. We've already been through it a million times. I won't bore you all with all the things that are provable about the weather that night, the photographs we have at the exact time, in the exact place, no waves. So that story didn't happen. And then 8-9 hours later, when you washed up on shore, I suddenly have a story that you put on the record. Now, look, I do my best to comb everything, to find everything, to give you all the reporting I can. This one slipped me by. Fox News Digital actually found the security guard at the boatyard where Brian Hooker washed up. And they were able to talk to him. I haven't found it on video. I've just got a transcript from it. But as I read through the transcript now, like 4 weeks later, it's like, bro, what you said then doesn't match the stuff you told other people.
Everyone, Shadow and I are going to send some good vibes to Tina and her dog over there because She's having some health issues, so the flock of black sheep should send Tina's dog some good vibes as well.
Or the facts or the evidence. So I thought I'd go through all of it with you, just, like a parlor game. Because at this stage of my life in this investigation, it's literally about finding all the things that Brian has said and showing you why they're lies. Because it's just becoming so voluminous. It's what I call a pile of bad facts. And if a jury ends up hearing all these, and he's not charged with anything right now, Brian Hooker's not charged with anything. There's 2 criminal investigations going on, one with the Bahamian police and one with the Coast Guard Investigative Service. By the way, can I just tell you, the number of media outlets, podcasters, all these people who call the investigators FBI, it's not true. They are not FBI. So please, let's just be accurate, y'all. The lead investigators on this case are like FBI of the water. I mean, they are the Coast Guard Investigative Service. They are bad effing ass. They know their shit. They're doing their shit. And they seized that effing boat. They got Soulmate off the coast of Florida, and they are reaming it a new one. They are going through it with a fine-tooth comb.
So apparently this is not the Royal Caribbean Police Force. This is the U.S. Coast Guard, or similar to it, apparently.
And it is very productive. My sources tell me things are going very, very well. The things that they were hoping were on board were on board. The way sailors who live aboard, how they might wire a boat with all sorts of
And folks, send some good vibes for Dee's pup as well. She's getting some blood work back tomorrow. So we have Tina's and Dee's dogs that need some love and support here, and some good vibes. Shadow sending it as well.
electronics that, I don't know, have memory and show when people are on board using power and show navigational history and show battery use and all those magical things, not to mention the Starlink on the mast. Thank you, Jesus, for that Starlink on the mast, because Starlink is something you connect to when you get close to it. So if Brian and Lynette connected to Starlink with their watches or their phones as they got near to Starlink, well, Starlink would have that history. Brian says they got nowhere near, 1,000 yards away, and boof, off she went. And then I floated for 9 hours. Okay, wait until you hear what the boatyard guy has to say about the 9 hours of floating. It's chef's kiss. Also, guess what else? I found out something, and it doesn't bode well for Brian Hooker. You'll remember this, Brian sent messages to Jim Todd. Jim Todd is one of my favorite people on the planet. He's Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue. Give generously, please. They're all volunteer. Brian sent these text messages to Jim Todd all about the search for my wife and blah, blah, blah. But, as he was spinning all his yarn, he also sent maps. And you've probably seen Brian's adorable little cartoon maps showing, well, this is where I floated. Here are the arrows. Well, I have been studying those maps like crazy because I saw their super duper AI. So Bri was on his Wi-Fi.
So apparently Dee's dog's name is Lily. She's 7. The blood work already came back bad. It's the ultrasound she's getting tomorrow. Guess I misread that before. Oh, to see why. The ultrasound is to see why the blood work was so high. Usually you think ultrasounds, you think pregnancies. That's usually how I see ultrasounds.
Creating maps. And I finally found out what maps he was getting and what AI he was using, because I think that's going to be a game changer. It has been for us in the past. In true crime, the Google searches have been enough to sink so many different defendants. I can't even begin to name them all, but they're delicious whenever you see their Google searches being read to them when they're either on the stand or at defense table, and then like counting the minutes to guilty. So when Bri was making his maps, I found out it's Gemini. He's using Gemini. His AI of choice, at least for this bullshit story, was Gemini. And so Ashleigh's little brain started ticking away. Like, I wonder what else he used Gemini for. I wonder when else he might have been using Gemini. Like, is it possible? And I'm not saying it is because Brian Hooker's not charged with anything yet. Is it possible that that bullshit bounced off the dinghy story didn't happen and that dinghy instead did make it to Soulmate, to their sailboat? And the Wi-Fi all connects to the watches and the hip bone and the thigh bone and all the rest. Is it possible that something went wrong on board? Lynette was unalived on board. And then suddenly it's, what do I do about this? Ask AI. Gemini. Is all of that, any of it possible? Because if Gemini was the AI of choice for those stupid fucking maps, this is where I floated and this is what happened and blah, blah, blah. What else was Gemini used for? And what time was Gemini used? Because my friends, this is like, it's like shooting fish in a barrel for crime fighters. If you're a Googler or if you're an AIer and you're trying to clean up your mess, yeah, that's like, I'm telling you, it's just like, it's the delight of us because I don't have to tell you, people think they're smarter than the rest of us and they're not. So I'm just saying, Brian Hooker's not charged with anything but bri. Oh, bro. If you had your fingers doing the walking on board Soulmate, looking for like, I don't know, maybe soft sand beaches nearby in the darkness, or maybe mangrove areas that might have little cricks that you could get through. If you were doing all that, well, investigators are going to find it. Yeah, that sucks to be you. Tick fucking tock. So there you go. Gemini, that's our best friend at this point, as well as Starlink, right? And as well as Lynette's Apple Watch. I still say Lynette wearing that Apple Watch, when we found that picture of her taking selfies, and you can see that, not a tan line, folks, it's her powder pink Apple Watch band on her wrist. And suddenly it's not on her wrist. It's on board Soulmate. Well, how did that happen?
Well, you make a good point there, Jeanine, right? Kind of shows you that this is the lane she's picking for herself. She went there. So now she feels a little bit connected because of her tax write-off vacation. But now this is pretty much the only case she's focusing on at this moment. Not much about Nancy anymore. So it can seem a little callous, I guess, right? I can see what you mean.
What happened if she bounced off the back of the dinghy on the way to Soulmate? The 46-foot sloop. Someone told me it's a Morgan. I still have to check that, and I also had the value wrong. Okay. So, and Lindsay's telling me it is a Morgan. What was the year, Lindsay? It's a 46-foot sloop. It's a Morgan. And I thought it was worth somewhere around $100,000, but apparently he paid around $52,000 for it, something like that. So half the value that I thought it was. Lindsay's telling me it's a 1980 Morgan. Still a lovely boat, I think. I love sailboats. I've spent a lot of time on sailboats. I love sailing. I've captained a 40. I crewed on a 44-foot CNC back in the day, and I captained, I think it was a 36-foot CNC in the Whitsunday Islands in Australia. But I still had no business captaining that boat. I still don't know half of the shit that I should. So I still think it's a lovely boat. In any case. Oh, and by the way, sorry, Brian, you're not getting your boat back. It's got crime scene tape all around it. We took the video. It's sitting there at the Coast Guard station in Fort Pierce, Florida, because that's where they towed it from 40 miles offshore. And it's crime scene. And agents are getting up and down, off board and on board, taking stuff off it daily. Yeah, still happening. They're still going up and down and getting on board and off board and taking evidence and putting it in those nice evidence bags that we spotted. We were able to shoot all that because we are on this story. We are not letting it go. And Brian Hooker, I am your worst fucking nightmare. You probably thought we'd all just say, oh, wow, sorry for your loss. It must be so hard being you. Fuck you. Because we're not leaving any of these details of yours unturned, right? We're actually getting
I don't know, somehow the way Ashleigh Banfield rips Brian Hooker doesn't satisfy as much as the way Nancy Grace does. When Nancy Grace rips you, I like it. I'm like, oh yeah, she's got it. Like, I don't know what it is that Nancy Grace does. Maybe it's the fact that she used to be a prosecutor. Maybe it's something just authentic about her. I don't know what it is, but I like it when Nancy Grace rips people. But something about it just feels a little bit different when Ashleigh Banfield does it. I don't know why. What do you think, Chad?
to the devil in the details, because that's where they live. And so we're in them, and we're not letting go until we find all these bullshit details of yours. And I know I'm not the only one. I'm just the only one that can tell you stuff from the investigation. But the Coast Guard Investigative Service, those guys are doing the hard work. They're like 5 weeks into this, and they have been busy every single day. And I know that because I check with them every day. I check in and I find out, like, okay, what's happening? And now there's a lot they can't tell me, obviously, but I know they're working on it every day. It's what it takes when you're going to seize a boat 40 miles offshore. Got to do a little bit of legwork to know that it's coming. Poor Brian, right? He's thinking he's going to get it back. Ooh. Bummer for you, pal. Bummer for you. Okay, a couple of things I want to tell you about. So here I was searching for this guy named Edward Smith. He is a security guard overnight at the boatyard. You know, the boatyard is this big, bright beacon of lights as Brian is supposedly floating for 9 hours towards Marsh Harbor, literally seeing these bright lights 150 yards away, and then suddenly decides to go the other way. That's his story.
What do we have here, Shadow? What do we have here? Mike, thank you very much for the super chat, Mike. Shadow and I appreciate it. I see Ashleigh has her potty mouth back. Yeah, she does. She's pulling out the F-bombs pretty frequently and liberally in this episode. Probably about 4 to 5. I don't know. I'm not sure if I even like it either. I mean, I have no qualm. I don't care when people curse. It just, I don't know. I don't know what it is. But it goes to show you, like someone said in the chat, Nancy Grace doesn't do it. And yet the point still gets hammered home. So curses for embellishment can sometimes be good, occasionally. They just can't be too frequent, I would say. Because it doesn't speak to, it doesn't make you sound more educated and articulate, right? Very occasionally, I think it can spice up some dialogue, but too much and not so much. But thank you very much for that, Mike. Shadow and I appreciate it.
I went and knocked on doors. Well, the only doors are through like so much tangle of like gnarly mangroves and forests and scrub. It would have taken hours and cuts and machetes and all the rest to go into the darkness. And then you would have had to go through like a creek, according to Jim Todd from Fire and Rescue. You would have had to go through like a whole watery area, knocked on 2 doors, and then no other doors, even though there's all these other doors in that subdivision. Okay. And then apparently you said something like a car, you flagged down a car and then he took off. Again, absolute horseshit. Because if you got back to the boatyard, you either went back through that tangle of hell, and you wouldn't have made it. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, pitch black. Or you would have had to walk miles out into the roadway and then miles all the way back to the boatyard. And why would you do that? Because you'd already be inland by that point. So that whole story is shit. So the boatyard guy says, this guy comes walking up. And let me just read you some things that Edward Smith told Fox News Digital when they talked to him. And I can only read you the account because I don't have any video of it. And I don't know that they had video. I don't know if they just talked to him on the phone, but whatever it was. Because as I read his account now, from everything else we've learned, it's like, oh, Brian, dumbass. You got to keep your story straight if you're going to lie. So Edward Smith says Hooker appeared exhausted and primarily asked for water. Natch, if you've been floating for 9 hours, you would be all that bag of chips. And so the security guard asked what happened, and Hooker said they were returning by dinghy from a bar restaurant in Hopetown. Well, wasn't Hopetown. You were at the Abaco Inn. Hopetown's way further north, but okay. They got caught in rough water and the lady went overboard. And Smith said, I asked him, so where's the lady? And he says, she's in the water. Now, these are Edward Smith's words, so I will not ascribe them to Brian. This could be his interpretation of the conversation. But effectively, that's the story that Edward Smith was being told, the security guard. But Smith was surprised by the amount of time, because Smith asked Brian Hooker, when did she fall in? And Hooker said around 7 p.m. Do what now, Brian Hooker? 7 p.m.? Because you told the rest of us it was 8 p.m. because it was dark. Too dark to see her anymore in the 2 to 4 foot seas, which were really glass calm because we've seen the video and the pictures. Yeah, 7 p.m. I mean, it's bright light at 7 p.m. I was there, literally in that spot, from 7 until 8, watching exactly when it got dark. And the weird thing is, it doesn't even really get dark until just a couple minutes before 8, and then it goes whammo. The nightfall just hits really, really hard when the sun gets low enough. But this dude, first of all, he says to somebody, I left at 7:30, the Abaco Inn. And it's only about a maybe 12-minute ride, dinghy ride out to Soulmate. So let's just say 7.
What do we have here, Mike? Thank you very much for the super chat. Shadow thanks you too. Chance Lynette wanted a new life, her daughter said. She did. And I think that's one of the things that might have happened right before this whole debacle is she broke up with him and said, I'm leaving you. But rather than let that happen, Brian Hooker said, no. If I can't have you, no one can. And again, that's a common thing amongst abusive relationships and DV. We saw the very same thing with Michael McKee in his double homicide with Spencer and Monique Tepe. We're seeing it potentially in this case here as well. Because right before this also happened, Lynette was dancing by herself, right? They were at that pool. She was dancing by herself, filming herself. And then they went out, and then she was never seen again. So I think it's very likely that she told him, I'm leaving, and he wanted no parts of that. And so he said, screw this, and then he did what he did. What specifically he did and what it looks like, I'm not exactly sure, but it seems pretty glaringly clear that he was at least involved somehow. That's what it seems like. A lot of smoke here at the least. And have a good night, Bethany. Thank you again, Mike.
7:38 or 7:36, this calamity happens and off she bounces, and the waves and the wind and that just, every time I say it, I get angry. It was calm and lovely, but it's bright light at that time as well. And lots of neighbors, other boats are around. So now you're telling the boatyard guy that it was sometime around 7 p.m., a full hour before nightfall? Again, you got to get your story straight if you're going to tell a lie. So then Edward Smith, whom I love at this point, says, so I say, from 7? And you're just reaching the shore now? Which is exactly what the rest of us said. Hold the phone. You are telling us that you're drifting 4 miles without any propulsion because you lost your other oar and you lost the key because Lynette had it in her dry bag, and you had 1 oar and you're just getting to Marsh Harbor now, 9 hours. So Edward Smith, the security guard overnight at Marsh Harbor, has the same bewilderment as the rest of us. Hooker explained to him that the wind was strong. The dinghy drifted away from her in the dark and he couldn't see her. He said she was swimming towards Hopetown with a yellow bag. Now, hold on. She's swimming where now? You're telling the security guard she's swimming towards Hopetown? Well, that's north from where you are. And you told Fire and Rescue And everybody else, that the last you saw her, she was swimming towards the boat, which is south. Entirely due south is the boat. Entirely due north is Hopetown. And I think someone else, you said that you thought she was swimming to shore. But nobody else heard the story that she was swimming with a yellow dry bag, a yellow bag. So again, get your shit straight. Your dry bag is yellow. Her dry bag is bright green. And you never told anybody else that she was swimming with it. You said it just went over. You never mentioned another word about it. You said you threw the floaty out to her and called out her name. And to one person you said, and I never heard her voice. And then to someone else, I heard her yelling, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. Once again, get your story straight, fella. Okay, so now Lynette has a yellow bag, according to Brian, talking to the security guard, Edward Smith. Here's another rich little piece of bullshit. Hooker claimed he sent up 2 flares, according to Edward Smith. Hooker claims he sent up 2 flares. One boat passed without stopping. A second flare to another boat also got no response. Is that right? Because in the boating community, a flare is Mayday. It's not, oh, look, someone has fireworks. Never mind. A flare is Mayday. So you sent up 2 flares because we got word that only one had discharged from the flare gun found in the bottom of the boat. We also got word from shore, from witnesses, a group of witnesses, who said there was a flare that went off from Soulmate, just one. And some of those witnesses, according to Jim Todd, the fire and rescue representative, said it was horizontal. Now, others said they thought it was vertical.
What do we have here, Shadow? Sweet Caroline, thank you so much for the super chat. Shadow and I appreciate this. Leaving for 2 p.m. psychologist appointment now. Have a great episode. So again, so your time frame is it's 11:32 p.m. Eastern here. Does that mean it's 1:32 p.m. tomorrow where you are in Australia? So Sweet Caroline's in Australia, for those who don't know. So that is 14 hours ahead. That's so cool, though, Sweet Caroline. Well, I hope you have a great appointment. Shadow and I really appreciate your support. Straight to the Hootie Snack 500 and the soy-free Hootie Snack Fund as well. So thank you so much for that, Sweet Caroline.
So could be the angle they were looking at, but witness accounts can be very, very unreliable. They can be skewed. Memories are weird. Used to be that, courts relied entirely on witnesses. It's tricky now. Science ain't great. But the fact is lots of people, a group of people, more than one, more than two, more than three, as we're told from sources, saw a flare from Soulmate. Not from where this jackoff says he sent it off. He told, I believe he told Fire and Rescue as well that he'd floated all the way to Lubber's Quarters, which is about a mile from Elbow Key, maybe 3/4 of a mile, and then threw his anchor down. Oh, because that's when you should have done it. And you're a U.S. Marine, right? You're an ex-U.S. Marine. And no one else who's a U.S. Marine do I ever call them ex, because I think once a Marine, always a Marine. But you, Brian Hooker, you don't espouse any of the principles in the honor that the United States Marine Corps espoused. None of it. So ex. You couldn't throw your anchor down when your wife is, being lost in the waves and the current and the tide, in the dark. So you told everybody else you were like all the way over at Lubbers and you sent off the flare. And yet witnesses say it happened at Soulmate. And now there's 2. You told the boat guy there's 2, but it looks like there's only 1 spent and the witnesses only saw 1. You got to get that story straight, fella. Okay. And the fact that no one would stop for a flare, that's the other thing. Forget it. I do want to mention that Edward Smith, the security guard, the overnight security guard at the boatyard, he saw that Brian Hooker had a yellow bag with him. There's been a lot said about the dry bag that Brian Hooker had at the boatyard. He washes up around 4 a.m, and this security guard sees a yellow bag, and we know it's a dry bag, right? But as he got onto the search and rescue vessel from Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue, give generously, please. There are 4 fire and rescue personnel on board. Jim Todd remembers very specifically the details about Brian Hooker getting on board. He was wearing a blue and white Hawaiian cut styled shirt in a fabric that was like fisherman or sailing, just sort of that breathable, athletic kind of fabric, but the cut of a Hawaiian shirt, blue and white pattern of some kind, as well as royal blue slides and a royal blue dry bag, not a yellow dry bag. Another of the fire and rescue personnel said they remember an aqua blue dry bag. Could be the difference between somebody thinks aqua, somebody thinks royal, but they both have this account that when he got on board, he had this aqua blue dry bag. A third representative from Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue can't remember at all what kind of dry bag. Didn't see it, didn't register. But the fourth, this is the one that drives me crazy. The fourth one remembers a yellow bag. Quote, from the beginning. That's what the fourth fire and rescue representative said. Yeah, yellow bag from the beginning. Well, clearly, Edward Smith says he's got a yellow dry bag. But there's something else, because rep number 3, who said that it was a aqua colored dry bag, remembers the aqua dry bag getting thrown up onto Soulmate when they got to Soulmate and sidled up next to it and tied up so that Brian could get out on board his sailing vessel, and also a police officer could get out on board the sailing vessel, and they went down below for an hour, those two. And when they came back out, Brian left his dry bag. And the fire and rescue rep had this thought in his head, like, dumbass.
That would be very interesting if Mike said, he asked the question, did Brian Hooker buy a chum bag? Wouldn't that be interesting if he did? Not that I know of, but that would be very interesting if he did.
You forgot your dry bag. So there was enough of a memory of that dry bag and the color of it being left on board Soulmate. Where's this discrepancy between the yellow dry bag and the aqua or royal blue dry bag? There's a piece of the puzzle missing there. If you have theories, please put them in the comments, because I am trying to figure this one out. To my knowledge, they're opaque, so it's not as though one is showing through the other. Oh, maybe I'm wrong, but 2 complete different stories about the color of the dry bag that Brian Hooker had that morning. Odd. One of them is not green, though. One of them is not Lynette's green dry bag. And there's Brian saying that she was swimming towards Hopetown with a yellow bag. What, Brian? Hopetown's north. Your boat is south. You told everybody else she was swimming towards the boat. And then someone else, I think you said, swimming towards shore. You sure didn't have that one down pat. And the yellow bag? Bro, she had a green dry bag. Let's not even get started on what she was wearing. Oh, she was only wearing a 2-piece.
The sailing hookers, I'll tell you. The sailing hookers should be like a traveling prostitution boat or something like that.
Black bathing suit. Bullshit again. Either you were hiding and obfuscating when the rescuers were asking, what are we looking for? Or you're just a horrible man, a horrible husband who doesn't even know what your damn wife was wearing when she went out and you lost her forever. She had an aqua-colored bathing suit cover-up, 2-piece black bathing suit underneath it, royal blue conch republic headscarf, and likely a black fanny pack. There's the description, Brian, in case you were wondering. Let's talk about what's really in your makeup. Most of us spend a lot of time worrying. Let's talk about a couple other things that are super important in this investigation. You've probably heard me talk about the watch that the Bahamian police gave back to Brian as they let him out of detention. You know, you have to give your valuables when you're being booked into a detention center, and then you get them back when you're released, if you're ever released. Well, Brian was given his watch. I really wish the Bahamians had kept that watch. They didn't keep it. Didn't photograph him to my knowledge either. But that watch is sort of whitish, big, clunky white watch. He's seen in a lot of social media wearing it. But guess what? We found a lot of other social media where he's wearing an entirely different watch, sort of a greenish black watch. So
look at that peak male physique, Shadow says.
what was he wearing that day and that night? Because so many of these watches, and Brian is a self-professed geek. He loves his gear. He connects everything to his apps and to his phone and his diving and all the rest. Might there be some metrics on those watches? If we can never get those watches, but maybe there are apps, companies on whom you can drop paper / warrants, search warrants to find out what the GPS data might show on those kinds of watches. So I'm just super interested. 2 different watches, a green and black one and a white one as well. There's something I want to draw your attention to, because when we spotted it, we smelled a rat. And I thought, oh, this one is a bad fact for Brian Hooker. As it turns out, it may not be. But let me start with an up close. If you watch the ABC, NBC, and CBS interviews, congratulations, not that many of you did. You've probably seen them clipped on podcasts instead, because network television is dying. But if you saw those interviews, there's a good close-up that you can zero in on his fingernails. Now, I'm one to talk. I've got terrible fingernails. I've never had nice fingernails, but they're clean. If you work on a boat, if you're a sailor, I get it. You're tinkering in the engine room. And okay, you might have dirty fingernails. Totally. But if you are out all day in the ocean, swimming at, say, Tahiti Beach for hours and hours, and then you're over at the Abaco Inn in the pool swimming, that stuff gets pretty cleaned up pretty quick. Lots of people will see their nails cleaning up real quick in the salt water when you're in there all day, swimming, paddling. Tahiti Beach is an in the water experience. You don't really hang out up on the beach. You're just sort of, you're walking around with the manta rays, and there's a walk up bar in the water. And so you're in the water. So I'm thinking, where'd that dirt come from, Brian, under your nails? Because, the night that all that hell happened, you're in the boat, in the water, and it was supposed to have rained, which you never mentioned to anybody. Yeah, the weather report said it rained, but you never said that to anybody. And then, that's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're arrested, and you're in a Bahamian jail at that point. That stuff looked embedded, like you'd been digging in the dirt. So that's what I'm wondering. Were you digging in the dirt, Brian? And I started asking some questions, and I found out that Brian has a fungus problem with his toenails, and it spread to his fingernails, and it made his fingernails and toenails look black and dirty all the time. And apparently Lynette was trying really hard to help him fix it. She'd even bought him some elixir to fix it, but it wasn't working. And his fingernails and toenails apparently looked like that all the time. So was he digging? I don't know. Is that blackness around his...
I mean, it'd be pretty careless of him to go on an interview if he was digging and that's what it was, and it was something that he could have removed. That would have been pretty dumb of him to do, or to not clean it if that's actually what happened.
Fingers from digging? I can't tell you that definitively because of the fungus. Lynette even bought this bottle of Benjamin's healing oil. Benjamin's healing oil to try to help her husband with his toenail fungus and his fingernail fungus. What a sweetheart that Lynette would do that for you, Brian. What'd you do for her? What'd you do to her? Brian's not charged with anything yet. Brian's innocent until proven guilty. Brian's not charged with anything. TikTok. So got to wipe that one kind of off the map for now. But I do want to talk to you about something I discussed before. Great Guana Key. In some of Lynette and Brian's social media, Lynette says, we got the scuba tanks filled at Great Guana Key, and they posted it on April 2nd, which is just 2 days before she disappears. Of course, posting it on April 2nd. There's no way to know that it happened on April 2nd. Posting it could have been filmed weeks before and just posted on April 2nd. Till we found out, based on their GPS locations, the AIS and the no foreign land mapping, they were at Great Guana Key on April 2nd. So they filled those scuba tanks on April 2nd. So what I want to know is, how full are they now? Because 2 days later, nobody's on that boat, right? Not supposed to be on that boat again. And I'd like to know if Brian's tank is depleted or if Lynette's is full and his isn't. Just be interesting to see. Also, I've been talking about Lynette's weight belt because they dive all the time, but you can see this picture of her in her scuba gear. And you're going to have to, forgive me if I botch this, but I think it's called a WDB, a weight distribution belt. It's like a vest that holds the tanks, but the weight is actually in the vest. So I just think it would be interesting for investigators who are combing through that boat to find Lynette's scuba gear and find out if all the weight that's supposed to be there is there. And if her scuba tank is full and his isn't, why is that? Because again, they just filled those scuba tanks at Great Guana Key 2 days prior. And we also know that all day on the 4th, all day, they're at Tahiti Beach and then the Abaquia, and they're not scuba diving. So there's no scuba diving on the 4th. That would leave the 3rd. There's no report or video or anything of them scuba diving on the 3rd. In fact, on the 3rd, they're making their way to the Firefly Inn to throw down anchor and spend the night there, and then wake up that next morning on the 4th, pull up anchor at 11:30 and make your way down south to Aunt Pat's Bay, where they threw down anchor for the last time. So I don't think there was any scuba diving going on. So if there's air used up in any of the tanks, be a good question to ask why. In my opinion.
Look at that. So Ashleigh has a camera on this boat, and then she's able to put Drop Dead Serious exclusive. That's what JLR should be doing in Arizona, or anyone on scene, right? If it's your footage, Jared exclusive. Shepherd of Black Sheep exclusive. Black Sheep Nation exclusive. Wizard of Radical Self-Respect exclusive.
Scuba gear could be used to get rid of something on the bottom of the ocean that you can't get to by boat. For instance, if you wanted to, say, take a body out to the Atlantic, it would have been very hard to do that in a dinghy. And I only say that because I saw the waves that day. I saw how rough it is on the other side of Elbow Key, on the Atlantic side. And it would be a suicide mission to head out there in a dinghy. I mean, the rollers are huge when it's an 18-knot wind, and it's lovely on the leeward side. Hence, it's an anchor because it's calm. But scuba gear is a different way to get out in the water. If you say, I don't know, beach on Tahiti Beach, which is right there. I mean, it's like 1 minute away, maybe 3 minutes in your dinghy. Beach.
And I guess the worst part for Kaylee, or what's her name? Carly is her name, her daughter. It's just not knowing for sure, right? At this point, just like with Nancy, it's not 100%, but you're 99.99% that they're just gone. So the not knowing part is really what's got to suck and eat away at you too. Even if you're pretty sure you know what happened, it still will eat away at you, I would guess.
It on Tahiti Beach, carry your payload to the other side, to the Atlantic side, and then launch in with your scuba gear. It's a theory only. Brian's not charged with anything, but these are the things that you have to wonder investigators are thinking, right? What are all the ways that Lynette could have disappeared? Because Lynette did not go overboard. Lynette did not go overboard. She would have been found in the Abacos. Everyone to a T, the locals, the search parties, the police, the fire and rescue, everyone we've spoken to, experts, all say the same thing. If Brian's story was true, we'd have found Lynette. It's like a big bathtub. It's only like 4, 6, 8 feet, 15 at the deepest part. You can see everything. We'd have found that dry bag. You'd have found that. No problem. You'd have found, even if the sharks got to her, you'd have found what they call particle. You'd have found something, because sharks typically don't finish things off. They just don't. And so it's widely believed she's either buried or she was somehow taken out to the Atlantic. Soulmate didn't move. That much we know from AIS. And I know that it's weird that they went offline and all the rest, but the no foreign land, that was still on. And Soulmate didn't move that night. But we've spoken about the engines on the dinghy. There was an old engine, and Lynette texted multiple times to her friend Marnie that they were getting a new engine, right? They had a Torpedo, the old engine, and they were getting a new one that was really sick with lots of telemetrics and all sorts of coolness to it. Electric engine called an NT 300. Nathan Thomas 300, an NT 300. That's the new one. So you would assume that the NT 300 that was pictured on the back of that dinghy at Great Gowanna Key when they were going to fill up the scuba tanks 2 days prior to Lynette disappearing, you would think that that NT 300 engine is going to be on the back of the dinghy. Bahamians have the dinghy. We will see what's on the back of the dinghy. Because if the Torpedo's on the back of the dinghy, well, why would that be? That's weird. Makes no sense. You suddenly switched engines 2 days after. You got the brand new engine that you've had on for what, almost 2 years now? Because if you've got the scuba gear and the waves are too rough for the dinghy, you could get yourself into the Atlantic in the darkness and drag your payload with, I don't know, say a weight belt or a WBD, a weight displacement belt. And you could carry your payload out and leave her. And then wiggle your little fins all the way back and skulk back to your dinghy and then put on this grand show that you floated across the Abba Coast. I'm just saying it's a possibility. I'm not saying that Brian Hooker did that. Brian Hooker's not charged with anything yet. Not charged with anything. Innocent till proven guilty. But these are the possibilities. And so to that end, searches are ongoing, right? Locals have been amazing. Nathan, who's an angel, has been searching the shorelines and giving us the videos of his searches. And he's got another one that we'll be bringing to you in the next episode that's really good because it will show you all the places that wouldn't be so tough to dig down in the sand right at the water's edge, but at least above the high tide line, you know? All the places where in the dark you'd be able to do this without too much trouble before, say, floating to Marsh Harbor. And so I'm going to bring that to you in the next episode, plus a couple of other really, really interesting little nuggets that disprove everything, really, this whole bullshit story that Brian Hooker has been feeding us. Because to that I say, tick fucking tock, motherfucker. You are going down. Your lies are unbearable. They are just unbearable. But it's a good thing that there's people like us and like the Coast Guard Investigative Service that will not let this go, because little by little, we just keep chipping away at your pile of shit. And eventually, what's going to be left over is a big fat indictment. I feel it in my bones. Can I say it for sure? No, but I feel it. I feel like that indictment's coming. Yeah, you're not seeing Soulmate again. I think I pretty much put money on that. You're not going to see Soulmate again. So kiss that one goodbye. It's what you call evidence now. Crime scene tape. Hey, listen, you guys have been amazing, by the way. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of the emails that we've been getting. We keep telling you if you know anything, dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com, dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. We've been getting amazing information, and I can't thank you enough. I'm also like super thankful of all the people who have come together and crowdsourced the solution of this ridiculous lie that Brian Hooker has been telling us. And you know who you are. I just want to say a couple of names because I so appreciate you guys. Hope and Pete, you're amazing. Captain Ronnie, you know how great you are.
Captain Shadow.
Dave Kasoy, thank you, dude. Captain Tony, Captain's on call, unbelievable. Captain Lou, Lydia, Jim and Cindy, Michaela, Marina, you've been incredible too. Nathan, amazing. Wendy, Cindy, I know there's two Cindys. Greg, Ashleigh, Fisherman Joe with the Wahoo. Oh, Dean, you and your daughters, Katie and Julianne, who've been so helpful with the video of the light events at night. You had your video going from Lubbers and we could see the light events on what looks like Soulmate at midnight, times when no one was supposed to be there. Jaden, Jackie, and then there are a couple of you who are anonymous, but you know who you are and you have helped us and you just said, keep a name out of it. We're going to keep your name.
Shadow and I will mention you, George. First Mate George.
Name out of it, but you know who you are and we are so incredibly thankful. If you have anything you want to tell us, drop us a line. Happy to keep your name anonymous. Happy to give you credit to whatever floats your boat. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you.
So make sure you support Ashleigh Banfield. Always on top of the case with Brian Hooker. She really dislikes herself some Brian Hooker, that's for sure.
Is Brian Hooker spending Lynette's money? In fact, where is he? Remember this?
I'm going to need somebody with more authority to tell me to stop.
But one day later, Brian Hooker goes back to America to spend time with his mama. How ridiculous is that? Like, that's just absurd.
Just hours later, he was back in the U.S.
Again, where is he? Why isn't he searching for his wife? He hired an attorney. That can't be cheap. Is he spending her money? There has been reports that Lynette had money. She had a lot of money. She had a big 401k from her time at AT&T. She had life insurance, and they sold their house. They both owned that yacht, which is now in the hands of authorities. He tried to have it moved, allegedly. Was he planning on selling it?
And then there's something called the Slayer rule, which prevents a person from benefiting from...
Oh, we've heard about that Slayer rule, right? With Nick Reiner in California.
Potentially any kind of criminal activity. So they'll probably enact that.
Maybe Lynette was his meal ticket. Maybe she was planning on leaving him. She bought a plane ticket, according to her daughter. And of course, you're checking in. How often are you checking in with investigators? Are you checking in with just
Carly Aylesworth making the rounds to all the true crime channels? Brian Etten, Ashleigh Banfield, now Matt Johnson. I wonder if she was on Nancy Grace. I don't think she was. But apparently, so her mother bought a plane ticket, presumingly meaning that she was planning on leaving.
just the Coast Guard and the search team, or are you also checking in with police?
I've been mostly checking in with the Coast Guard right now. I know my grandma.
Hark. What do we have here, Jeanine? Jeanine, thank you so much. Shadow and I appreciate this. Saw a news clip about an owl who made herself a home on an apartment balcony in Texas, and she had laid eggs and had 4 little babies. Anything you want to tell us, Shadow? Is this an accusation that Shadow has been sleeping around in Texas? Cheating on, well, he doesn't have a Mrs. Shadow. But maybe Shadow gets around like that song, I'll Be Around. Maybe. I'll have to talk to Shadow in private about this, Janine, to see what he has to say for himself. But thank you very much for the super chat. Shadow and I appreciate it. And welcome to Nanny Goat. What is shaking in here, Nanny Goat?
Grandma is talking to the FBI, so she's more has more connections right now talking to her.
How's that going? Has she shared anything, the latest with FBI or the federal search?
Yeah, they are the ones that found my mom's plane ticket. back a month ago when she was planning on coming home, a one-way ticket. And so they're starting to dive into their records and stuff.
Do you think that he knew about the ticket?
I'm sure, because I think they have a joint account. I think they have separate accounts. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure he didn't know about it.
Was the ticket surprising to you? Did you know about it?
I did not know about it. Sorry, the ticket happened right after I left, so I thought they were fine when I left, but then this happened a couple days after I left, so it was surprising.
This is what Lynette's mom shared with CBS.
Darlene
It's
Hamlet
amazing.
is Lynette's mother.
I wish it were over. It's not having answers is extremely stressful. I haven't heard from him
Is it odd to you that he hasn't contacted you at all?
that he's innocent. Yeah. She says, I can't take any more, Mom. Get on a plane and come home. She says, I want my stuff. And I said, I want you. She bought a ticket, but she never came.
I have a very special guest on the program, someone that understands white collar crime, someone that understands insurance fraud and investigations after a person goes missing or if they're declared dead.
Well, nothing happened to the ticket. She was probably murdered before she can use it, is what I'm thinking has happened.
Their death is contested if it is suspicious. He's going to answer a lot of our questions. But first, do me a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and share this episode. They have a case of missing Lynette Hooker.
And by the way, make sure you like this video too. Spank the like button, leave your DNA of choice in the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and tell about 5 friends about us, the Flock of Black Sheep. Most importantly, say hello to the Flock of Black Sheep in the live chat here. We've got a great group of folks. And as always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships, great ways to support the channel. They help me pay for Shadow the Night Owl. Here's soy-free Hootie Snacks. We put some leftovers in the Hootie Snack 500. And thank you very much for all of the support that we've been getting so far. We're usually live between 10 and 10:30 p.m. Eastern, almost every night of the week. And we talk about true crime, current events, and psychology. And occasionally I do a surprise live stream earlier in the day too.
Here to help break it all down, we have a very special guest who's very knowledgeable in this world and is going to help make sense of all of this. We have Eric Elkins, founder of Double E Financial and host of the 1% Show podcast. Thanks for your time. And I know that we don't have the actual documents, the legal documents, the financials, but when we are talking about the Lynette Hooker case, in general, people have questions about this topic. So I'm putting that out there right away. When someone is missing, does their loved one, in this case, their spouse, have access to their financials right away?
It depends on the assets. I know that there was supposedly this $250,000 life insurance policy that was taken out, supposedly, I guess, 6 months ago. Typically, one of the issues with an insurance policy is you have a 2-year contestability clause. So that would be an issue to have access to that money because it's only been 6 months. So most likely the insurance company is going to do an investigation and they're going to hold back and freeze that opportunity to see if he was the beneficiary, he's not going to have access to that money. They'll do an investigation, and even if he's acquitted, he still potentially might not get that money and go to the estate.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the assets, and then we're going to talk about, life insurance versus 401k. You're talking more about the life insurance, right? So there's no access to life insurance right away, and especially if someone hasn't been declared dead, if they're just missing. So what's the process for that?
They'll typically, most financial institutions are going to freeze the assets like 401k. I think he potentially, any kind of joint accounts that they have, probably he has access to, at least today, but potentially they could be frozen while they're during this investigation. But typically everyone's going to freeze. It's not going to be where he just has access. They give him the money, or he has access to the money, and then then potentially come back and take the money back. They won't do that typically. They're going to freeze those assets. He's not going to have access to them.
Does someone have to be declared legally dead, and how long of a process is that when we're talking about life insurance?
So there's
It's a good question. If you have to be legally dead to collect life insurance, that would also apply to the Nancy Guthrie case too. Is Nancy Guthrie legally dead? No, she's not as of yet. So if someone was doing that for life insurance, this is the issue they would run into. So very good question by Matt Johnson here. Let's see what Eric says is the answer.
And one of the big issues with this case is that it was 6 months that this policy was taken out, and you had the 2-year contestability. If we were past the 2-year contestability, then a death certificate would be filed, information, a claim file, a claims report would be filed to the insurance company, and he really would be able to get that money if he's so-called the beneficiary. But because of this 6-month issue, this is going to be an investigation by the insurance company, regardless of what's going on behind the scenes with the criminal, as him being a suspect. So this could take a year. It could take even longer than that. And even if, like I said, even if he is acquitted, he's still potentially, in some of these cases, if the insurance company, they feel like there's some guilt involved there, then they have the right to potentially, because of the 6-month contestability, they have the right to just provide that money to the estate.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that as to if foul play is suspected, because we do know that the husband in this case, when we're speaking hypothetically about it, because again, we don't have the actual financials, but he was taken into questioning, not charged, but he was in questioning for 5 days, and then he fled the Bahamas back to the United States, and we haven't heard from him since. But that answers the question about foul play there, and it kind of freezes the process, I guess, for the insurance company. Is that right?
Yeah, if she, supposedly she has this 401k money from AT&T, that'll be frozen. Even if he attempts to put a claim in to get this money, it doesn't matter. It will be frozen. Most of these assets, no one will have access to.
In this case, they sold their home and they were living aboard their yacht. I know that we're dealing with international waters here, but just in general speaking.
So frozen is the answer, as he said.
In most cases, what happens to the large assets? Say the husband and wife are both on the title of a home or a boat or a car. What happens to that?
Potentially, it's going to fall back, because they're U.S. citizens. It's going to fall back to the rules and laws of the U.S., even though this potentially happened. And again, all that will have to go through potentially probate and settlement, and a court will decide, depending on what happens to him. If he's acquitted, he's going to have access to those assets. Not necessarily the life insurance policy. That's a little. If he really did do something inappropriate here, one mistake he made is if they got this insurance policy strategically, you needed to wait 2 years, because the insurance company has the power on that piece.
So 2 years you would need to wait.
The 401k money, most likely, if he's acquitted, that would go to him, because he's most likely the beneficiary, unless he signed a consent to release himself, which who knows? I don't know if he did or didn't. These other assets, home, cars, things like that, if they're joint, and that's going to all be decided by court. But if he's acquitted and he's not involved in this, then there's a good shot that'll all go to him.
What does an investigation look like by an insurance agency or just any firm that pays out? Do they do an investigation like police, or do they rely on a police investigation?
Both. They have their staff and folks behind the scenes that'll do a very thorough investigation. They're going to check everything from her health records, but to make sure that there was nothing, out of the norm with her health records. They're going to go very in depth. They have their own investigation team, their own third-party resources that they will use, and then they will also take advantage of anything that's privy to them through the criminal investigation, if there is one.
Do they also take a look at social media posts by the couple?
It's a good question. I don't know if most likely I would guess they probably do because it's public information. But I don't know for sure on that. I would think
that's fine. And then also, in this case or in high profile cases in general, so you have the husband who did a couple interviews, and then you have the daughter who did her own interviews. I'm sure as part of the investigation and thoroughness, they take that into account as well. So let's talk about the Coast Guard. They're a main part of the search, and I'm very happy to hear that, they're the best, our military members. But it's so sad that they haven't been able to find any key evidence or find your mom so what have you been told by the men and women with the Coast Guard?
When they talked to me, they mostly talked to my grandma about most things, but they did tell me about that they handed over everything and that they're going there tomorrow. They came over to my house to ask questions for a couple hours. So yeah, that's really it.
What were they asking you?
They were just trying to gather all the facts of everything I knew about him and their relationship, because I felt like there was more to the story of her just falling overboard.
Yeah, what they ask you about the relationship and what came to mind? What did you share with them?
I shared their past history of domestic violence and child abuse from Brian.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, number one, but I've also seen some reports about that. So what has your grandma and your mom's friends, and what have you witnessed in their relationship? Because they've been together for how long?
Over about 25 years.
So what can you share about that, about these allegations of domestic violence?
I did witness him choking out his daughter when I was in 3rd grade. I was a witness in court for that. I did witness him choke out my mom and throw her out of my room one night when they were heavily drinking.
So if he's choking out his daughter and her mother, as she just said, that's pretty bad. As I've mentioned before, if someone strangles their partner, it becomes 700 to 900% more likely that person gets murdered by them. That's just the statistics.
And then she called the cops, and then she's the one that went to jail because there was blood on Brian's face, I guess. So they took her away instead. And then I know 2 years ago they broke up. He threatened to kill her and was choking her out and to throw her overboard. So the fact that this is happening 2 years later is a little suspicious.
And I know that my friend Ashleigh Banfield has been reporting on the case quite a bit too. And I know that she talked to your grandma and also had those pictures of what appeared to be bruises.
Yeah. She had pictures of my mom with bruises on her back after a fight. My mom never told me about that, and I didn't know those pictures existed until recently. So my mom tried to keep that stuff away from me. She'd try not to show relationship problems unless they were actually going to break up. Then she told me, but fights and all that, she didn't really include me in that.
That must be really hard to think about and to see right now, especially in this moment where your mom's missing and you feel.
I mean, if someone's being choked, though, Like I can see her hitting him if she's being choked to defend herself. I mean, and again, you can look up the court records about him choking his daughter. That would be interesting to see too.
Helpless.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm sorry about that too. But I think that it's important that you're sharing this information with the authorities so that they can, better ask him questions.
He called me Sunday night between 8 and 8:30 that she was missing, 25 hours after the fact. And
25.
Yeah. He sounded very monotone, no emotion. And then he told me, yeah, she's missing, by the way, and didn't really seem like it was that important. What I know is that she fell in and he threw a flotation device to her, and then they drifted apart and then he paddled away. That's all I know.
Yeah, and then there's been questions about, so they were on a dinghy, right? Walk me through what they were on, where they had left, and where they were going.
They were at Elbow Cay and their boat was at Marsh Harbor. So they took the dinghy to Elbow Cay to go to a restaurant, which is kind of far away, I think like a couple miles. And then they were heading, and I think they moved their sailboat actually, or I think, yeah, they moved their sailboat next to Elbow Cay. And so on the way back, she fell in. They were in Marsh Harbor, then they moved to near Elbow Cay.
Do you want to see him?
No. This is too suspicious. Like I care about him because he's been in my life since I was 4, and I really wish I didn't grow up with someone that's capable of doing this, but yeah, I don't know.
So you think he did something?
I think this is just, I have theories that he possibly could have. I have all the what ifs in my head, but.
So apparently she says that there was an abusive situation. Lynette's mother says that her daughter, Lynette, would complain to her about the situation. So, like I said, it just seems like there's some smoke in the situation here.
To believe that she just fell off and he just said bye, didn't even try, it just screams suspicious.
When it comes to the insurance company, in my opinion, the insurance company has tremendous leverage, and all because of the rules and backing of what's been established for centuries is that contestability clause. And then there's something called the Slayer rule, which prevents a person from benefiting from potentially any kind of criminal activity. So they'll probably enact that.
I really wanted to talk to you because I was talking to Eric Bland about Murdaugh the other day, and it's really the financials that landed him in prison.
I think there's 3 things going against Brian Hooker here, right? What the daughter and her mother are saying about the abusive situation, and simply all of the lies that Brian himself has told about what's going on. I mean, those 3 things right there just make it look not too good for him. And if you're a prosecutor, you're going to look at those things and say, yeah, not too good.
And he admitted to all of that, and that was a big part of the murder trial. And then also it was a big part of the trial too with Lori Vallow Daybell out in Idaho, who was accused of killing her kids, convicted, and then she was using the insurance money. So I really feel like the financials get intertwined in a lot of these cases that we cover.
I think, but you know what's kind of strange with this, and again, I'm not saying if that policy was $250,000, we're not talking about tremendous sums of money here, at least on that insurance side. And then from what I've read, and you Matt, you know way better than I do, it was supposedly like $600,000-$700,000 in her 401k. If that was traditional 401k money, I'm saying non-Roth 401k money, then that's not even worth $600,000-$700,000, because anything he would to withdraw from that, he's going to owe ordinary income taxes. Let's just say there's no issues involved here. he would be penalized if he accessed that money on top of the ordinary income tax. So it's not like this would be some kind of life-changing amount of money. That's just how I look at this. I'm not trying to be this investigator or Columbo, but that's how I kind of look at it. Like, if he did it and he was guilty of this, I don't necessarily know if his motive was money.
If he did it, I think the motive was simply control. The motive was control, and if I can't have you, no one can. Same thing with Michael McKee. If he is convicted, that would be the motive. Oh, if I can't have you, no one can. Again, this is the trademark of narcissistic personalities, right? Very possessive and controlling.
It just seems a little odd. There's just not that much money here. And one other thing that would be interesting, and I don't know, again, the answer to this, is whether or not he was the owner of the insurance policy or she was the owner. Because if
so from what I'm hearing, I believe that she was the owner and may have changed it. But again, we're just kind of looking at this from an outside perspective. There's just been so many questions online as to the process and if he could be living off of her money right now. I think that that's what a lot of the viewers wanted to learn.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I couldn't answer for sure, but it's one, even if he's assumed innocent, he's not going to have access to this money for a long time, for over 12 to, if I had to guess, 24 months minimum that he'd have access to this money. And I would bet a 50-50 that he's not even going to have access to the $250,000 period on the life insurance. If they find enough things and evidence to bother the insurance company, then they're going to most likely give that money to the estate or to her daughter, would be my guess.
Yeah, even though she was married, Lynette Hooker, who is missing right now, if they find a body, if they determine no foul play, or if it's determined in that way, does it go to the daughter or would it still go to the husband?
If he's not guilty, then most of these assets will go to him, assuming he's the beneficiary. With the exception, the life insurance is just that question mark, because the insurance company, even if he's acquitted or not found innocent, they still could go after. And the insurance company could still say, we found enough evidence that we find that this is squirrely and not making sense, but we'll still pay the benefit, but we're just going to pay to who was listed as contingent beneficiary, which could be her daughter, or if there wasn't one mentioned, then it would default to the estate and how her will was addressed and things like that, which again could fall back to the daughter.
What kind of questions do you have about this case just in general, and what are you going to be watching for as you read the headlines?
When I watch his mannerisms on those interviews that he's done, I mean, for me, and
I would say like this, she might have wanted to get away and disappear, but not like this. Not like, because let's face it, is there anyone that thinks Lynette Hooker is alive right now? I don't. So yeah, she might have wanted to get away. Seems like she'd want to get away from him in particular, considering everything that went down. But not like this. That's what I would say.
It's just, my personal feelings on it. It means nothing. He seems awkward. He seems guilty. But again, I always say, I'm fortunately, knock on wood, I've never had cancer. So I don't know what it's like to have cancer. And I have no intent to ever hurt or abuse my spouse. So I don't know how you would react in these kind of situations, because I've never had these things happen. But he just seems strange to me, where he just seems a little guilty-ish, let's just say. But that doesn't mean he is. I don't have enough facts or evidence on this to state that.
While you're here, please remember to like the video. Shadow wants me to get on your case. Like the video, spank the like button, and make sure you subscribe to the channel and tell about 5 friends about the flock of black sheep here. And thank you very much for all of the support I've gotten so far.
But the other piece, I struggle with, I just don't see the money being such a major motive here. It's just not life-changing money that we're talking about. And if he was involved in this insurance policy in regards to, I mean, usually like in our world, when we sell a life insurance policy, we make sure we explain there is a 2-year contestability clause. So if you commit suicide, this money is not going to pay out if you do it within the first 2 years. If you commit fraud, you have cancer, you've been going to Mexico for therapy, and you die within the first 2 years, that insurance company is going to do an investigation to make sure that there is not fraud involved, etc.
Oh, so you can't end your own life and get it either within 2 years, or have someone else get it, I should say. Interesting.
So hopefully whoever sold the policy said this to them, and so that makes me also go, I just don't see you would hope that he would have known that if he is guilty. That's where I just kind of get hooked up, where I just don't know if he did do this, was it really about the money? That would be that's where I'm kind of interested. And, when I look at this, it's going to be probably very difficult. If he was guilty, it's going to be very difficult to figure that out, especially if they don't find a body. So it's an interesting case that I'll, tune into, and I'll continue watching you, because I know you do a great job, going over these type of cases. So, in a long story short, that's my answer.
Well, thank you for your time on all of this. And yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. Everybody is with you on the sense that we just can't figure this one out. It's not cut and dry. It's very confusing. Nothing makes sense, including his story. So yeah, I'm right there with you. How can we get a hold of you and follow you, Eric?
So I have, and thank you for having me on. First off, I didn't even get to say that at the beginning, but I have a podcast called The 1% Show. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple, etc. And it's not about crime. It's about what the 1% folks are doing in this country today that the 99% aren't willing to do, and how they're propelling and getting.
So he has a podcast about that, but he makes guest appearances about true crime. Interesting.
Financially succeeding as well as personally succeeding. So that's the motive of that show. And then I also have my financial company called Double E, which you can reach out via www.doublellc.com. The word double, D-O-U-B-L-E, E, 2 E's in the middle, LLC.com. Matt, thank you so much for reaching out to me. I thoroughly enjoyed and love what you do.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.
You too, buddy. Thank you.
All right, so make sure you check out Matt Johnson, Justice with Matt Johnson. And now to wrap up the show, everyone's favorite, Nancy Grace.
Bombshell tonight, so-called overboard missing mom Lynette Hooker. In the last hours, we learn about a loud and ominous splash and mysterious lights, all from the vicinity of Lynette's husband's yacht. He wasn't even supposed to be on the yacht at that time. He was supposed to be, according to him, out calling and calling into the dark night air for his wife, who bounced off the dinghy. Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
Oh, it hardly even looks like Nancy Grace.
The search has now moved to the land.
There are torpedoes coming to his story over and over again.
Obviously, authorities do not believe Lynette is in the water. Was she ever?
If the body's in the water, it could be anywhere in the Atlantic Ocean by now.
Why were lights seen moving about on the husband's yacht when he says he's out in the water calling for his wife who bounced off their dinghy? In, according to him, massive swells that suddenly came up off the edge of the land, basically on a sandbar where you could stand up. How did this happen? Why has her body never been found? Lights and a very loud and ominous splash was heard. A lot going on in the case and more. Joining us tonight, a very dear friend of Lynette Hooker. But first, to Vanessa Walsh joining us. She's a star of Unmasked True Crime. Vanessa, what do you make of the latest? Let's start with the splash. What splash was heard by whom, when, and where?
Well, Nancy, that's a really interesting development because there's potential reports now of splashing in the water and even lights that were flashing near the anchorage that night, which does raise the possibility that someone nearby may have unknowingly witnessed at least part of what happened. In a quiet anchorage that night, unusual sounds or sudden lights can stand out dramatically.
The mailbox back there, a boardwalk mailbox. It's pretty cool.
And that's why investigators appear to be so interested in identifying the nearby boaters.
Josh Colesrud joining us. He's a veteran criminal defense attorney and a former felony prosecutor with the U.S. Attorney's Office. He's the founder of the Colesrud Law Offices. We call them ear witnesses. And ear witnesses can be invaluable at trial. What do you say to this? Do we have an ear witness to Lynette Hooker going in the water, and does it contradict the husband's entire story?
Well, not the way that it's being described right now. I mean, we don't even know who heard the splash. And, when a boat is out on the water, you're going to hear splashing and sounds. And, without more evidence to corroborate and kind of describe exactly what was heard, I don't see it really having very much probative value. Now, what everybody's doing right now is, they're kind of looking back and looking at all the suspicious activity, right? You saw the comments from the daughter, that he looks guilty, the daughter suspects him, the marriage have problems. Now there's a splash outside the boat. But what we don't have, we don't have a body. We don't have a cause of death. There's no crime scene. There's no forensic evidence. There's no eyewitnesses. And there's no independent evidence that Lynette Hooker died by criminal conduct. And what we do know is that Brian said that he was out on an 8-foot dinghy and he described 15 to 22 knot range of winds. And I looked up at the NOAA weather data. That is the national organization that keeps track of the waves and the winds on the ocean. And it corroborates Brian's story about when the waves came in. And when you're looking at, who's telling the truth, you have to look at corroborating evidence.
Stop, please. Good gravy, man. I know what you're doing. I asked you a question about a loud splash that occurs not near the dinghy where it's supposed to be away near the restaurant, but outside the Soulmate, the yacht, around 9:30 p.m. And you are throwing this stinky stew of other facts to get me off my question. In court, I would say, objection, not responsive. I asked the court to direct the witness.
See, Nancy knows how to cut through some BS. Shadow always appreciates that. Let's hear it again.
To answer my question, but I don't have a judge to force you to answer, so I'm going to go to Dave Mack joining us, crime story.
No judge to force him to answer the question, but she's right. He didn't answer the question. He evaded. He evaded and said something else. Chatty Cathy, thank you so much for the super chat. Shadow says thank you as well. Just thank you for all your support and hard work, every single person, and Shadow has done so much for me. I love you all. See, we all love you too, Chatty Cathy. Shadow loves you too, as do the rest of the flock of black sheep. Lots of love here, by the way. So thank you very much for that. Shadow appreciates it too. For everyone else, likes are free. Spanking the like button is free. And subscribing is also free. And telling 5 friends is also free. Thank you again.
Investigative reporter, what can you tell me? I've got to get to the lights. I've got to get to the lights that were seen on the husband's yacht, the Soulmate. At the same time, he says he's out in the water looking for his wife on the dinghy. Okay, I've got to get to that. But first, the splash. Dave Mack, what can you tell me about the splash? And then maybe we can get Josh Colesrud to narrow his line of monologue and give us a good answer. Hit it, Dave Mack.
Nancy, you start with, we've got Brian Hooker, who is supposedly on the dinghy the entire time, from the moment they leave the Abaco Inn and head back towards the yacht, towards the Soulmate. They never make it, according to Brian Hooker, they never make it back to the sailboat, the Soulmate. They're on the dinghy. But we're hearing reports of a major splash, what is called a massive splash at 9:30 p.m. To hear a splash that loud on the water, Nancy, it's got to be a big splash. I mean, it's not just dropping a cup of water over the side here. We're talking about something loud enough to be heard above the normal sounds of the water. But again, remember, this is coming from the Soulmate where nobody is on the boat. And that encompasses the lights you mentioned a minute ago.
Okay, before I go to Blaine Stevenson, this is Brian Hooker, the husband's friend. He's also a boating expert. His wife, very close to Lynette Hooker. I want to dispel something. I think I can dispel it. That Josh Colesrud said, that when you're out on a boat, you hear splashes. Well, that's not entirely true. Let me see Colesrud really quickly. Colesrud, I've had the joy and the pleasure. Did you just take your glasses off?
Yes, ma'am.
I looked away for one moment. I see you yanking off your glasses. Josh, you look just as good with glasses on. Just know that. Feel confident about it. That said, Josh, I just had the pleasure of sitting out on the water for hours and hours on end, many, many weekends in a row, while my son competed in bass fishing championships. Yes, his school has a fishing team. Who knew? That said, no, you don't just hear loud splashes. We sat there in silence. I was not on his boat. Nobody needs their mother looming over their shoulder when they're trying to compete. But I was out there on the water and everything was dead silent. So hearing a loud splash in the middle of the night, I mean, these witnesses thought it to be uncharacteristic. So I'd like to hear your response to that before we move on to the lights that were spotted on his yacht, not the dinghy where he said he was at that time. In fact, he said, I'm going to go back to Vanessa in just a moment, that it took him hours and hours, I guess, to paddle with his hands and 2 teacups to get to the end of the island where he washed up. That's where he says he was, not on his yacht, the Soulmate, blinking lights.
What is this, Julie Bug? Oh my God, you guys, there was a really bad car accident in front of my place. I had to go out there and make sure everybody was okay. I had to do CPR and I got them breathing again. What a rush. Holy mackerel. We have life and death situations in front of Julie Bug's apartment. Yeesh. Well, good thing Nurse Julie Bug was there to give CPR. Shadow says he salutes you.
But first, address the loud splash, please.
So Nancy, that witness's account actually shows exactly why this case is still uncertain and why it's not solved. Because hearing a splash and seeing lights on the water at 9:30 at night in rough conditions does not tell us what caused the splash or who was in the water, whether it was accidental or whether any crime occurred. And remember, the timeline itself already involves a dinghy in trouble after the dark and bad weather. So a witness hearing a splash in that environment is completely consistent with Brian Hooker's account that something went wrong on the water. And again, remember, everybody is just assuming his guilt. So when they hear a splash, it must be murder. They see lights, well, it must be staging. Behavior.
I'm not sure what I think of this splash. This splash has nothing to do with what I think happened, though. In my opinion, I think the splash part is really just to drive up some engagement and some clicks. That's not really moving the needle for me one way or the other.
His behavior must be guilt. But there's another explanation staring at everybody in the face, and that is his story is consistent with the NOAA and their description of the water conditions. And that wasn't an environment that he was controlling. That's chaos. That's chaos.
So Julie Bug, tell us, were they truly not breathing? Like you got into this accident that I'm guessing was so bad that they stopped breathing temporarily? And did they need to do the jaws of life to get them out? Tell us more about what happened here.
And, I've handled cases like this in island jurisdictions like Palau, and in rough water at night, people get disoriented fast. Distances become impossible to judge. Lights move, sounds carry strangely over the water. A single gust of wind or a wave can separate people within seconds. So the witness's account may help establish that there was activity on the water that night, but it does not establish homicide. And that's the key point. Nobody has bridged the gap between something bad happened and Brian Hooker committed murder, because we still have no body, no cause of death, no forensic evidence, no confession, and no proof of criminal conduct.
Now, he's the defense lawyer, right? And that is what the defense lawyer would say. What a prosecutor would say is, well, listen to his daughter, listen to his mother. What about all these lies? And then it'll be up to the jury to decide. If there ever even comes a point where there's charges, there might not be. There might not be a point. But I have said, I think in this case, there very well could be in a couple months. But what do you think, chat? Do you think there's going to be charges within a couple months here? Press 1 if yes, and 2 if no. So again, press 1 if you think there's going to be charges soon, 2 if you don't think so.
And until somebody produces that proof, that evidence, this is a tragic case. And, it's the homicide has not been proven or shown in any way whatsoever.
Joining me, Brian Fitzgibbons. He's Director of Operations, USPA Nationwide Security. He leads a team of investigators around the world finding and extracting missing people. He is a former Marine and an Iraqi war vet. Brian Fitzgibbons, you and I have had many conversations with, in particular, a death investigator and 2 medical examiners regarding Lynette Hooker. And isn't it true that we all concur, had she gone underwater, unless she was weighted down, her body would have emerged by now? Because, as you and I know from homicide investigations, the body, when it decomposes, fills up with gas. For instance, when you have something in a plastic bag and it goes bad, you forget about it in the fridge and the bag starts swelling up. That's the same thing with the human body. Gases are created upon decomposure, and the enclosure, the sandwich bag or the body, begins to swell. And if underwater, that body will come to the surface. That's why we don't have Lynette's body. If it had been in the water, it would have come to surface by now. Agree or disagree, Fitzgibbons?
I agree. And that seems to be the consensus of search and rescue experts from the area who have spoken out publicly, that they don't believe Lynette's body is in the Sea of Abaco. And I'm going to add one thing that to jump on what Attorney Colesworth just said. I think that probative evidence is coming with the seizure of the vessel and the data that's going to be generated from the systems on that boat. that these eyewitness statements are now going to mean something when it lines up to events that took place on the Soulmate that directly contradict the story that was given to police. I think that probative evidence is walking us down right now.
I want to get to the lights that appeared on the husband's yacht, the Soulmate. At the time, he's supposed to be out looking for his wife, Vanessa Walsh. Vanessa, I want you to hear what Blaine Stevenson has to say. But first, before we go to Mr. Stevenson, who's so kindly joining us tonight, I want to get a little refresher, as we say in court. Let's refresh the witness's recollection. Translation, the witness just screwed up on the stand, and let me just jog their memory really quickly. Vanessa, where does Brian Hooker say he was the entire night after his wife bounced off the dinghy?
$1 million question. Let's hear our friend Vanessa here, what she has to say.
Brian has said, as we've heard many times in those recorded statements, he was very adamant that he was on the dinghy with his one oar, paddling for 8 hours to Marsh Harbor. He has never put himself on that boat. So anything leading to that would be in direct conflict with his own words of what happened that night.
What was his explanation of what he did after his wife bounced off the dinghy? What did he do?
According to Brian, he yelled for her for about an hour, but she never responded. He threw the one flotation device out to her that he wasn't sure if he got, and then he just kind of hoped she swam towards the boat and then used his one oar to go paddle for help instead of getting out of the boat in the 4 to 11 foot water and going to try to save Lynette.
When we lost Lynette over the side, I paddled over to Marsh Island, and I landed on some crazy shore there, and we couldn't get yesterday. The fire department braided the dinghy too.
I mean, that story's pretty wild, though, isn't it? Is there anyone who doesn't think that story is pretty wild?
So there you go. That's from our friend Harvey Levin at TMZ. And we've got so much sound of Brian Hooker locking himself into that story. He basically, got a teacup, according to him, and paddled over. And it took him hours and hours and hours. And he washed up far, far away from the Soulmate. Then how in the hay are there mysterious lights and loud splashes outside his yacht? Okay, before I get to the lights that witnesses saw on his yacht when he's supposed to be at the other end of the island washing up, to Blaine Stevenson. This is Brian Hooker's friend. He is a boating expert, and his wife is very, very close with Lynette. Mr. Stevenson, thank you for being with us. What do you make of this?
What I make from all of the reports that have come out is that there are people in the area. There were people overlooking the area. I've gotten calls from people who talk about different weather conditions in support and against his claim. But what we do know is there were people in the area. I do know that a human yelling is louder than any splash I've ever heard. So my problem is an hour of him yelling for his wife isn't heard, but a splash is in the same general vicinity. My problem is that he floated over to Marsh Harbor in the same weather conditions within 3 hours, the same amount of time of that flotation device, which doesn't have the same windage as his boat, ending up within 300 feet of where he was. But nothing from Lynette ends up in the same spot. It's not the evidence that Brian did anything wrong. It's the absence of evidence to support his story that's puzzling me.
Summertime expenses stacking up fast. For many, the only option is swiping that credit card. Hooker sold everything she had, used all of her savings for herself and her husband, Brian Hooker, to go around the world sailing on a yacht, the Soulmate. And then there out in the water, actually not far from in the water at all. You could stand up on a sandbar. He says they leave a restaurant, and yes, they're confirmed to have been there, that they get onto the dinghy to go back to the yacht, and somehow between the restaurant and the yacht, a swell comes up. She, not him, she falls off, bounces off the dinghy. He tries to save her by throwing her a cushion that you sit on, although there were life preservers in the dinghy, but she apparently didn't get it, and she's never been seen again. Here's his story.
She basically just bounced off the dinghy in the middle of a little blow, like 20-some knot winds that popped up, and on a half-mile maybe trip back to the dinghy, and single thing.
I mean, if he was blackout drunk, I think that would probably be one of his excuses. But from what the bartender said, they actually know how many they said he had. There was like 2 to 3 drinks had. At least according to that bartender that Ashleigh Banfield interviewed.
Every single thing. We weren't wearing life jackets. It was sundown, and the sun set like basically 10 minutes after she fell over. Dinghy key over with her because it wasn't clipped to anything or anybody, and she had the spare dinghy key in her dry bag, which was with her. Yeah, it was inflated. Inflated because it was folded, but the wind blew us apart so fast that I think she tried to swim back to the sailboat, back to our sailboat, which was probably, I don't know, 1,000 yards or something. But the waves were 3 foot, and I was trying to ship the oars, and one of the pins on the oars broke, and that bird dropped over the side. And I was yelling for her the whole time, and I yelled to her that I lost the oar, and I threw the anchor out and anchored the dinghy, and I yelled. I couldn't see her anymore. It was the moon had not risen yet.
That is from our friend Vanessa Walsh, the star of Unmasked True Crime. Blaine Stevenson, is that the yelling that you are referring to, that nobody heard that, but they did hear a splash?
Correct. I mean, the time of night, he says it happened at sunset. In our community, that's when everybody's on the back of their boat. If you're home, if you're a liveaboard, if you're in the area, that's the best time to be outside, because you're not getting beat by the sun. You're not getting it's dinner time. That's sundowner time. If you're out at that time. The time, if I had to pick a time for a tragedy to happen on the water in an anchorage, I would pick that time, because you're most likely to get help. You're most likely to be heard. You're most likely to be seen. So the fact that he screamed for an hour, and we have no reports of that 5 weeks in, but we have reports of people who are up and around and on land far enough away from Soulmate but could still hear a splash. I'm trying to piece it together with the Brian I know, and it's not working. And I really wish he would start talking and explain it so that it makes sense to us.
Blaine, have you asked?
Jeannie, the water was 4 to 10 feet, 4 to 11 feet deep. So not very deep in this place. It's another thing that makes it seem a little more weird too.
No, he's blocked everything on social media. I mean, I can ask him right now. Brian, let's go to the Bahamas and look together, right? The easiest way to shut up all the haters, as you call them in comments, is let's grab me, you, Dan. Let's grab the whole team. Let's go find your wife. Let's get closure. There's no reason for me to be on a computer and you to be where you are. Let's be in the Bahamas and let's go find Lynette.
Blaine Stevenson, do you think he'll take you up on it?
I hope so. The Brian I knew would have. This guy I've seen for the last 5 weeks, I don't know what that guy would do. But the Brian I knew would bring the people together, go fight the cause, and go get the answers.
So apparently this guy knew Brian, and he's saying, yeah, I don't know who this current version of Brian is, because it doesn't seem like the person that he knew. Interesting.
And if in the process it clears his name, great. You know, I don't want Brian to be guilty. I just can't mathematically make it work. And I think that's the misconception, is nobody is going after Brian because they want to go after Brian. Everyone's going after Brian's story because it's not working. When was the last time a body went missing in the water in the Bahamas and was not recovered in the Abaco area? So, yeah, the mathematics behind this is where Brian is a man of science. Brian taught me a lot about boating. The longer we go and a dry bag has not been found on shore, the longer we go and a blue Columbia jacket has not washed up, the longer we go, we get more information, we get more speculation. What we don't get is any more confirmation of his story.
You mentioned 2019. Why?
So I was trying to figure out, I want to believe Brian. I want to understand so that I can keep my wife safe. I want to make sure that the cascade of failures that he went through, we don't go through. But I can't find a scenario that fits anybody falling off a boat and their body not being recovered in that area. There is an incident in 2019 where a gentleman left his fishing boat and was never found again. But even that report shows like the gas tanks were tampered with or something. So there was some jinky stuff with that one. But the search and rescue guys, when they're being interviewed, everybody who's being talked to, this just doesn't happen there. And I do believe all the sailors who say anything can happen at sea. I've been a part of it. Brian got me through a hurricane. But it doesn't fit the terrain, and it doesn't fit the night, and it doesn't fit the time of his story.
You stated that you have a mathematical issue.
So apparently this guy is skeptical of Brian's story, and he's someone that knows Brian. Interesting to note.
You can't mathematically make his story work. And I agree with you. What I would like to happen is that we find Lynette alive. I don't think that's going to happen. I hate to put that out there and in the search for her alive, but I think she would have been in contact with her daughter by now if she were alive and if she could reach her, which makes me go to the next logical step, is that she is dead and I'm examining his story and I want him to be telling the truth. I don't want him to be guilty as well, but his story doesn't add up to me. So what about it? You can't mathematically make it work. 2 and 2 is not equaling 4. What is the issue?
Here would be my thing, Mayor. If this was a case where he was just so drunk that he couldn't remember, the truth that he was just so drunk would be better than what he's done. Now, granted, he can get a little bit of trouble for boating while drunk, but that's in comparison to what it could be. It could be a potential murder charge. So if he was so truly that drunk that he was blacked out, the truth would actually be the best thing for him. But it's interesting that he's decided to not tell that truth if that was indeed the truth. I don't think he was that drunk, at least according to what we heard with Ashleigh. But if that were the truth, it would actually help him more to say that. And then say, I just don't know because I was drunk.
Issue that concerns you the most?
The issue that concerns me the most is we do know that the weather, like the lawyer said, at some point that evening got bad. We have people that I trust that were boating in the area that report, hey, the weather got squirrely that night. But the Sea at Abaco and the Ampats anchorage and that area is completely different, right? So I talked to a gentleman who owns a house on Elbow Cay and it looks out over the Sea at Abaco. And he said, yeah, it got pretty choppy out there, but that's over where that yellow line is in your picture. not over where the red arrows are in between the two land masses. And if the weather and wind was that bad and he's in a dinghy and the wind is blowing him to Marsh Harbor, the time frame to get to Marsh Harbor doesn't add up to me. And the fact that when search and rescue was out 3 hours later, they see the green float he threw. How does the float within 3 hour time frame of the dinghy? It to end up within 300 yards of each other, or 300 feet of each other, as he says. I went out and I tried this. I threw a dry bag off of.
Here's the thing. If Shadow and I were Brian's defense lawyers, first of all, we would have coached him up much better than what was happening so far. That woman he had initially, I don't think that woman helped him do any favors. But you would say, if you indeed were drunk, you got to use that to your advantage in a way. And the truth would be the best thing to say in that case. And then you don't need to go into this elaborate tale. Because as of now, it just seems like he was telling an elaborate tale. And when you're telling an elaborate tale, it kind of just seems like you're making a story up. And when you're making a story up, that's what a freaking guilty person does in a case like this, right? I know from reading Matt Murphy's book that's how a prosecutor is going to see it. Prosecutor is going to see it as the potential DA that would file charges. All right, well, why is this person making up a story? Okay, but then it comes down to, can we prove it? Making up a story, sure, but can we prove he's making up the story? There's some things they can prove, but does that prove he did it? That's the question the DA and the prosecutors are going to ask before they file anything.
My boat, and I seen how fast I separated from it. And a dry bag has more windage than that green float. And my dinghy drifted away from it at a rapid pace. For both of them to end up in Marsh Harbor within 3 hours of each other, the math isn't math.
Well, I will say, if you're blackout drunk and you don't remember, does it make you look even more guilty to say, I was drunk and I don't remember? I don't know. Here's the thing, right? It just comes down to, are you guilty or are you not? If you're innocent, the truth will make you sound innocent. But if you're not innocent, then whatever you say is going to make you sound guilty, is what it seems like to me, right?
You're on cross-examination. Who is our next sponsor? Well, here is a probative clue. To Dr. Rachel Tolles joining us tonight, forensic psychologist, author of a book on the cusp of publication, Inventing the Psychopath. Dr. Rachel, thank you for being with us. We know that Lynette had taken all of her savings, everything, and it was all being used to fund this trip with her husband. We know that she had left him on multiple occasions, and we know there had been domestic violence in their past. What do you make of what you're hearing?
Well, Nancy, I mean, in my opinion, the most damning evidence in this case is the fact that 2 years ago, Brian allegedly choked her and threatened to kill her and throw her overboard. Her daughter, Carly, said he threatened it multiple times. She describes him as kind of having a bit of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde personality, which we see in a lot of homicide cases, meaning that in public with strangers, he was charming, he was nice, people liked him, and they would never imagine that he would be like this. But behind closed doors, he was a completely different person. So here are some facts to understand. Prior domestic violence is present in the majority of intimate partner homicides. Multiple studies have found prior abuse histories in roughly...
What do we have here there, Dale? Shadow likes the sounds of this. United States Dale gifted 5 the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect memberships. Shadow and I really appreciate that. It's going to go towards soy-free Hootie Snacks and the Hootie Snack 500. And we shall see who the Lords of YouTube Random decide will get these 5 memberships. So everyone should thank Dale for that, especially the people that get these memberships. Shadow and I are very grateful. Dale is awesome.
Around 80% of homicide cases. So that's important.
So 80% of homicide cases where there's a spouse killing the other, domestic violence related. I could see that.
Non-fatal choking is one of the strongest predictors of future lethal intimate partner violence. And one landmark study found that women who had previously been strangled by a partner were over 7 times more likely to later become victims of attempted.
Shadow sounds like she's spitting out our facts, isn't she? We said 700 to 900% more likely to be murdered.
Attempted homicide by that partner and significantly more likely to become homicide victims. Okay, so strangulation is a demonstration that someone is willing to violate physical boundaries and dominate another person, threatening their life with their own hands. So there's a psychological willingness to cross that line. And the overwhelming majority of intimate partner homicides are preceded by prior violence, escalation patterns, coercive control, threats, strangulation, or separation conflict, and every single one of these markers is allegedly present in this case. And of course, then there's the part where we hear about him allegedly choking his daughter in the past. I mean, he was acquitted for that, but are these women just making up the fact that he's choking them? And I mean, even in the police reports, they found that the daughter's neck, the marks on her neck were significant with strangulation or choking.
She told me 2 years ago that he choked her and was threatening to kill her and throw her overboard. And she said he choked her so bad that she felt something like pop in her neck. So, and then that's when she packed a bag and left. And that she only left him for like a couple months. She went back to him, sadly. I don't know why she went back. I think she's always known that she needs to leave him, but she cares about him a lot, and he can be a great person. Like, he's been there a lot for me and always gave me advice too.
To Blaine Stevenson, this is Mr. Hooker's friend. His wife is very close to Lynette. Is that the Brian Hooker that you know? Were you aware of any of that?
I was aware they broke up in late 2023, early 2024, that she left. My wife was more aware of the intimate details. She gave me the man version, which is, hey, they're not together anymore. And then when we moved to Anchorages, then they were back together. And at that time, and before I've learned all I have about domestic violence, it was none of my business. You know, and so I didn't think anything of it. But what it does tell me is when he was doing his interview, and I've never been away from my wife for more than 10 days. It's not a crime to lie to your friends and lie to the news and everything else like that. But it's pretty damning to us when we know you separated for over a month, at least. I think it was almost 2 months while you're boating with us. And yet then you're saying, I've never spent 10 days away from my wife. Like, he's choosing to lie. I don't know this guy. He's choosing to lie for no apparent reason. Why hold an interview if you're just going to lie?
There's history of him choking her out and threatening to throw her overboard. So the fact that this is actually happening makes me believe there's more to the story. I've seen him choke out one of his daughters before, and we had to go to court for that. And I was only in 3rd grade. So he's just repeating patterns.
From our friends at Fox and Friends, that's daughter Carly speaking. And like Dr. Tolles told us, in one of those incidents, it actually went to court and he was acquitted on one of the choking incidents. Blaine, again, thank you for speaking out tonight. Your wife, very close with Lynette. What is she making of all this new evidence?
She is handling it in the way that Brian, soulmate, and the Coast Guard are in Florida. That's one portion of this. Her friend is in the Bahamas, and And so be it. Let the Coast Guard do their job. Let Brian hide under wherever he wants to hide if he doesn't care. We want the permission. We want to be able to search the Bahamas. We want the closure Brian doesn't want. The closure he wanted with his mom, but doesn't want with his wife. That's what my wife wants.
I see that's a really good point, Blaine, because he left just as Carly, the daughter, was touching down. He left the Bahamas and came back to be with his ailing mom, who is apparently still alive. He has left her bedside pretty quickly. So he came to see her while his wife is still missing in the Bahamas.
Which means closure is important to him.
You would think, but his mom has not passed away. So I don't know what closure we're talking about when it comes to that.
But then closure for Lynette would be just as important.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Dave Mack, what can you tell me about the lights aboard the Soulmate at the time Brian Hooker was allegedly, according to him, out in the water desperately looking for his wife?
Nancy, this is the part that is difficult to explain away. Remember, from the time that Lynette and Brian Hooker left shore to head towards their Soulmate on the dinghy, nobody was on Soulmate. Nobody was on that boat from there on out, according to what Brian Hooker tells us. So lights are not just seen, Nancy. These lights are actually part of a security video. 17 minutes after leaving Abaco Inn, security footage of the Soulmate captures a bright flash of light. That's flash of light number one. A second bright event occurred around midnight.
Yes, and so Jackie, if you have something going on, you can definitely speak to any of us about it. We are very open-minded and non-judgmental and supportive here.
And multiple witnesses subsequently reported seeing flares being fired off the sailboat. Around 8 p.m., a horizontal flare, not vertical. Distress signal goes up, weapon horizontal, around 8 p.m. So there's your shocking lights and flares, Nancy, on the Soulmate.
Vanessa Walsh joining us, star of Unmasked True Crime, who has dedicated weeks and weeks of investigation into Lynette's disappearance. Vanessa, what more can you tell us about the lights that appeared on the Soulmate, the yacht, when Brian Hooker says he's out far, far away in the dinghy trying to save his wife who has disappeared in the water?
Well, Nancy, there's a lot of intriguing theories I've seen about this. It will be interesting to see if they can corroborate that, because it is an intriguing theory to think about the fact, was there an argument on the boat that he said they never got back to? Was a flare gun shot in defense or as a potential just out of desperation as a weapon? We don't know the answers to these questions, but that has been floating around quite a bit online. But it'll be interesting to see what they can pull from those witnesses that they were trying to locate and the digital evidence on the boat. You can either support or contradict Brian's story that night.
Brian Fitzgibbons joining us, Director Operations, USPA Nationwide Security. The witnesses, and there are more than one witness, that states the lights being seen from the Soulmate, while the husband says, Brian Hooker, that he was far away trying to save his wife who bounced off the dinghy. What would the working theory be? That they were back on the Soulmate and that's where an argument took place?
I believe so. And I want to point out one thing. Brian Hooker very quickly made a public statement and included, kind of casually included, that he set off an emergency flare. Okay. When witnesses are now coming forward, eyewitnesses saying that they saw a flare, not necessarily at the same time he said he shot it, and not in the same location, right? Now we have two flare stories. This is something that I'm watching very closely. Is if the CGIS can verify that they indeed went back to that boat, and the theory that you just mentioned was correct. That they left the restaurant, they went to the boat, whatever happened there, and then the cover-up began. That's all going to be based on, can CGIS pull data from this boat? Is there security footage? Did somebody's phone or watch connect? The data here is going to be everything.
And the waves were doing their thing, and I saw her, I think, twice. I threw her a flotation cushion that we used to sit on the dinghy, right after she went in. But I couldn't tell if she got it or not. We've been looking for the cushion too, the search and rescue teams. How small a person is in 2 or 3 floaters and 25 knot winds. And so after an hour of calling her, I had never heard her voice. And a powerboat came by, and I waved my flashlight on my phone, and they were so fast that they didn't even see it. And then another one came by right behind it, sort of 5 minutes behind it, and I grabbed the flares by then. I had 2 flares, and they didn't see the flares, I guess. And then I didn't know what to do. By the time I got the anchor set, I was probably a quarter to a half a mile away from her.
And to you, Blaine Stevenson, Brian Hooker's friend, there you hear him describing, as Brian Fitzgibbons recounted, shooting off the flares. But according to other reports, when the dinghy was searched, no flares were missing, and the life vests were right there in the floor. Now you've heard him talking about shooting off flares. What does that mean to you? And what do you make of multiple witnesses seeing lights and even flares, one being shot horizontally off the Soulmate at the time Hooker says he's out looking for his wife on the dinghy?
Well, I've got two separate thought processes on that. One is he talks about 2 boats coming, and he fired a flare for the first one and it didn't see it. And then he fired a flare for the second one after it passed him and didn't see it. And I can understand a boat going by and not seeing a flare if it was shot behind him. They're not looking behind him. The second boat that came 5 minutes later would have saw the flare he fired for the first boat, though. Right? Because it would have been heading towards the flare in his story. As far as lights and flares and the activity on his boat, I don't know what could have been. I mean, I don't know when his sister showed up. Was she on the boat that night? We got reports if he had family in town. He stayed with them. She's seen in a video. Maybe they were on the boat the whole time, and that's okay. Or maybe Brian's just so unlucky that he got robbed at the same time he lost his wife. It makes as much sense that he got robbed while he lost his wife off the back of a dinghy as it does his story.
Where are you getting the rob theory?
If he's not on his boat because he's on a dinghy, somebody broke onto his boat to cause all those lights to shoot off a flare on his boat. He's just had a bad string of luck. Yeah, it's as probable as the second boat not seeing the first flare.
At that point, I was slightly close.
That's an interesting theory. So that, someone broke onto his boat and shot off a flare if he was on the dinghy? That doesn't make much sense. But is it impossible? Not impossible, I guess, but I would also say unlikely.
Or to something which has a few houses on it, and I decided I had to go get help. But I could not get to the island flood paddle, and the tide carried me right the first house and then the second house. And so I ended up drifting and paddling for many hours until I landed on Marsh Island about 4 miles away. The dinghy key was not attached to me, so when we were around trying to get back in the boat. The sun was falling when it kind of dropped off. It was a magnet key, for the electric motor. And it was a cascade of failures, and it's something I'm never going to forgive myself for. And then, so this happened like Saturday night, airing all day at the place called Tahiti Beach. And they would have a beach bar that pulls up on a barge. And, we hit the next stop, and we stayed too long. We left too dark. All kinds of shit. No life jackets. I had the two that you stuff, under the seats that nobody ever wears for, Coast Guard purposes. But we used to wear these life jackets we had these other ones all the time.
That is from our friend Vanessa Walsh at Unmasked True Crime. But there's more.
I said I've never harmed Lynette, and I never would harm Lynette, and I want to find Lynette. No one has told me not to stop looking, and I'm going to keep looking.
From our friends at NBC, that is not what the daughter and Lynette's mother say. Back to Blaine Stevenson. This is a longtime friend of Brian Hooker's. Given the loud and ominous splash that was heard, given the lights on the soulmate at the time he says he's in another place, what is your message to Brian Hooker tonight?
I feel like the world's painting you in a bad light. I feel like there is a bunch of information coming out that makes your story, myself included, makes your story not true. Let's get together. Let's go find Lynette. Let's prove your story right. Let's give finality.
It's a weird way to say that. It almost sounds like he was going to defend him for a minute. And he's like, actually, no. There's a whole lot of things coming out that make your story not true. Interesting.
To everybody, you're doing no good in Michigan. Let's go find Lynette and let's get this solved. That's what needs to happen.
To Josh Colesrud, veteran trial lawyer, what's your advice for Brian Hooker? Keep hiding under the bed?
Nancy, now this is a defense lawyer, so let's see what his advice would be.
Well, I think that his attorneys are doing the right thing, which is instructing him not to make any statements to the media and, frankly, to keep his mouth shut. You are under a microscope. All of your actions and words are going to be scrutinized to the very letter. Now, there are going to be pundits that say, why aren't you out there, searching for your wife? But, you have law enforcement doing that. And, you're going to be blamed regardless of what you do right now. So, his attorneys are doing a good job. They need to make sure that he doesn't incriminate himself and, frankly, needs to be prepared for
more than he already has is the key word there. And don't incriminate yourself any more than you already have.
Or an arrest and maybe charges down the road.
Oh, my goodness. So you're not recommending that he go post haste back to the Bahamas to try to find his wife?
Absolutely not.
Ooh.
No, it's a foreign jurisdiction. Bahamas have primary jurisdiction in this case. It's a third world country. You do not want to get stuck in the
third world country. Interesting.
Justice system in any country, especially one that's outside of the United States.
And to you, Dr. Rachel Tolles, what is your advice for Carly, her daughter?
Yeah, I mean, this is incredibly tragic, and I'm sure she's still in shock. And I think that for her, it's just, again, taking care of yourself. Mother's Day obviously just passed recently, and so it's an incredibly hard time for her. So just be kind. There's no, obviously, when your mother or someone you love is missing, you can't really grieve it because you don't really have that closure, and so you can't even say there's no right or wrong way to grieve because but it's unfortunately likely that she's passed, and so if whatever she feels is totally normal.
Young Carly and Lynette, her daughter Carly looks completely different in this picture than she does now. It looks like she turned into like a stoner chick, but that's not what she looks like in this picture.
Feels angry, just do whatever it takes to take care of yourself right now, because this is an incredibly, probably going to be the hardest time of your life.
I do know one team is trying to solve the mystery of Lynette's disappearance. Vanessa Walsh, star of Unmasked True Crime. Earlier, we heard Brian Fitzgibbons refer to CGIS, Coast Guard Investigation Services. They have the boat. Why and where is it?
So what we know about that is that, Brian and Lynette's yacht was being surveilled by the U.S. Coast Guard. And as it was en route from the Bahamas, headed back to the U.S., it was seized by the Coast Guard. There are reports that there were 2 unidentified males on the boat at the time. I don't think it's been verified who they were, but it's been widely assumed that those are people that Brian hired to bring the boat back. But the fact that the Coast Guard seized the soulmate tells us that the investigation, this has moved far beyond a routine missing persons investigation. That boat is very possibly a crime scene, and investigators clearly believe that there may be evidence on the boat that's worth processing and preserving.
Brian Fitzgibbons, USPA Nationwide Security. What do you make of the Coast Guard seizing the boat, the yacht, the soulmate, as it's on its way back to the U.S.?
Yeah, I think they're going to want to go through with a fine-tooth comb everything on that vessel that's creating digital forensic evidence. You're going to have navigation systems. It's been reported now that there were multiple security cameras on the boat. So did those catch anything? Wi-Fi, any type of communication device. And I've even heard that these batteries, some of the batteries and power equipment generate a log that will indicate when events took place on the boat. So that's going to be the number one thing. The second thing is obviously, doing a deeper dive on that vessel to see if there were cleaning agents used, to see if there was blood spatter or any type of physical evidence of an altercation taking place there.
Hi, guys. American homeowners. The FBI has been warning.
Well, I guess that's the end of the video. That was the end of Nancy Grace. But I thought it was a good video. Shadow is not a soy boy. And the weather outside is frightful. And the fire is so delightful. So if there's no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. YouTube would not let me write that comment, Danielle. Can you believe it? Insane. Now, I do eat mozzarella sticks because that's cooked cheese. Pizza, cooked cheese. But no wine and cheese or cheese boards or cheese cubes for Shadow and I. We stay away from that. Popcorn, carrot, and oranges, now that's a different story. Also, by the way, if Jackie's still around, I don't know if you were referring to this case is overwhelming or something else is overwhelming, but we're all worried about you. So definitely come back and let us know what's going on tomorrow night or whatever. We would all like to hear. Shadow and I are concerned. What, Jared? What? Maybe go and scratch out a video from Board the Boat. Maybe. That could be Dale. I do like some sourdough. I'll give it that. No cheese squares for Shadow and I. Or wine and cheese. Cheese. There's less to go over, Rooster. Less videos, less action. When there was more Nancy Guthrie coverage, then there was more to go over. But now that people are diffused and talking about many different cases, there's fewer things to go over now. How about that? Let's see here. How about that then, Rooster? We shall see. Like I said, we have to see. Weekends, I go later. But we also are determined by what is even going on out there, too. All right. Well, everybody, make sure you like the video while you're here. Spank that like button. Leave your DNA of choice on the like button, of course. Throw Shadow a like vest the same way Brian Hooker should have to Lynette Hooker. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Tell a few friends about the flock of black sheep here. Let's see here. You got it, Teresa. Let's see. Stoner Grandma. That's give me a chuckle, Danielle. Yeah, could be better, huh, D? We have to have the content cooperate. Tomorrow, I'll be interviewing Dr. Salerno. Probably doing another daytime stream soon to go over parental alienation as well. And we'll see what else from there. All right. I've heard of it, Tina. I think I've had it before too. But folks, it's about time to wrap it up here. So thank you, Nanny Goat, and Rooster, and Christy, Julie Bug, Dee, Dana, Jackie. Hope you're well out there. Mayor, Snoop, Teresa. Glad Mayor and Tina are getting along again too. Or patched things up. Danielle, it's about that edible time. Tweet, thanks for being here, Tweet. All right, Dale, you have a great night. Till next time, folks. Till next time.